Mark from Apprentice 121, just popping a quick video up answering some of the common questions that I get asked. I've picked 20 that I've had through the course of Apprentice 121 since I started it back in April, and just my answers, my thoughts and opinions on some of the questions. Some of them are factual, some of them are just what I think, and hopefully other people find this useful if you've had similar questions in your own mind. And I can put it on the website, share it on the social media platforms, and hopefully it's a useful point of reference for anybody who's got a question that perhaps they would like to ask but don't want to pop a message over. So yeah, I hope you find it useful. Please drop a like and subscribe on the channel. That would be brilliant. And I'll keep some videos coming about my own business and Apprentice 121 as and when stuff pops up. So anyway, 20 questions coming up, and I'll answer them as best as I can. The first one's a biggie. I suppose you go big or go home. And you'll have seen on the slide there, it is, what effect do short courses have? So I mean, this one would be my opinion. I don't think there's any definitive answer that's going to be right or wrong. Ultimately, I think that short courses reduce apprenticeship places. I think that it's all intrinsically linked. So for people who come through the short course route, they're often, in my opinion, missold that entry point and training, and they then come into the industry needing to make a living, and they jump into the domestic installer sector, and you know that has an impact on the rates that other domestic installers or people who focus in the domestic market, are able to charge, and then reduces the amount of money that they can make in their business, which then puts a squeeze onto everything and takes all thoughts of employing an apprentice away. But again, it's linked back in the other way to some degree, that perhaps some small domestic employers weren't looking actively at the apprenticeship system and not creating those spaces. So, you know, this marketplace of short courses popped up as an entry point for adult retrainees. I mean, we do need to bring people into the industry by one means or another, but there has been some abuse of the short course system, definitely, in my opinion. It is just my opinion. Obviously, it's not something that has a consensus from Apprentice 121. I do need to make that clear. But it would be nice to see, you know, a thriving apprenticeship system, and I think there's a lot of steps in that process to get there, where we have one-to-one tuition between smaller one-man bands, if you like, and apprentices, and doing something about the volume of domestic installers coming into the industry through short courses is something that should be tackled. You know, the short courses for people in industry do have a place. Obviously, we all need to take our regulation courses. There's the 239 one for developing your test and inspection. I mean, to a point, there's the EV course as well. There's all sorts of little bits and pieces you can go off and do that we would define as a short course. So I'm speaking specifically about the entry into the industry, if you like, where you have no prior experience of being an electrician at all, and you enter into a system of training to then come out in, I don't know, 5 to 12 weeks' time as a qualified electrician, often without any practical experience. And certainly through Apprentice 121, we've had a number of people get in touch asking for that. So they've gone through short course training and they're looking to get somebody to give them on-site practical experience. We've managed to help one or two, but obviously the situation that we're in at the moment is not easy to solve. I do think as industry we need to try and come together and address that, and help these people who've been missold that training become more experienced and technically competent electricians. So I hope that answers that question. Question 2 is quite an easy one, really. I mean, is there an age limit for apprenticeships? I mean, I get asked that a lot. Is age a barrier to me being an apprentice? And the short answer is no. There's no official age limit on ever taking an apprenticeship. You know, historically, the funding is usually for 16 to 18-year-olds for employers. So it is primarily in that age group where you'll find a drive on the recruitment. Because of the COVID situation, there is some extra funding now. So if you're over 25, there's a £1,500 grant an employer can claim for employing you. But obviously we need to be realistic that most employers are generally looking to benefit from the grant system if they can, but also pay a lower rate while you're going through that apprenticeship. And usually the way that the pay rates are set up, it's weighted towards younger people. My own opinion is that could do with being changed, because we are kind of excluding people from going into the apprenticeship system as an older learner. And I think that that's perhaps something that government needs to look at if we're trying to increase the number of apprenticeship places after COVID, getting people into skilled work. And certainly, even as an older person, you often have more commitments. You might have your own place that you're living in with rent and bills, etc., to pay, and it's not realistic to live off an apprenticeship minimum wage while you're going through that training. But equally, should it be employers who are having to pay that difference so that you can earn a decent rate of pay while you're going through an apprenticeship system? It's a really hard one to solve, is that one. And I think it needs engagement across all sides of industry, so from employers, from apprentices themselves who are perhaps a little bit older, and from government and training bodies, to see if the whole allocation package of funding into the apprenticeship system, it can be more fairly shared out amongst all parties involved. So that's my opinion on that one. So we touched on question 3 in the last answer, and it's, are grants available for employers? Yes, they are. For 16 to 18-year-olds, there's the £1,000 that's been there for quite some time. There was a period where that was actually double that. It was about £2,000, but for the last couple of years, certainly it's been £1,000. And then with the COVID thing, till the end of January in 2021, there's an extra £2,000 for apprentices who are 24 and under, and that's on top of the £1,000, and an extra £1,500 for apprentices who are over 25. So I should say that the extra £2,000 is in addition to the £1,000 if you're aged 16 to 18. Obviously, if you're age 19, it's just the £2,000 grant your employer could claim. So there are some grants there. There's also some grants from the local authorities, so you have to check in your particular area, but some local authorities have schemes where if you recruit an apprentice through the local authority, there's an additional fund for employers to claim. So that's worth looking into as well, having a look on your local authority website about apprenticeship placements and positions, and see if you can maybe get registered on there, because sometimes it gives you an edge on other people who might not be doing that. So I hope that helps. Thank you. So this one that's been asked a few times, and it was asked again a couple of days ago actually, but it's, I've looked at short courses as an adult learner. What are my best options for getting into the industry? And again, I've kind of answered this before, but I would never encourage anybody who's got no prior experience in the electrical industry to come into the trade through the short course system. It's to seek out that apprenticeship role if you can. And I know as an adult retrainee, it's very difficult because the employment opportunities just aren't there, certainly not at the moment, and even in better times, it's difficult. And these training organisations know that, and primarily looking at people like you to take your money and tell you that you're qualified as an electrician, when unfortunately it's most likely not going to be the case, certainly not without that practical experience that you would need. So it would just be to consider and to try and put in place a way that you could take an apprenticeship position. I think there is actually access to student loans. This is something that we're looking at the moment with people who are in the training industry within Apprentice 121 to try and really drill down on if that's true or not. It's been suggested that there is the option there, so where people can take out a loan to go into further education, that there is also that there for somebody who's training to be an apprentice to take that funding as well. But that's still something that we're looking at. And obviously, that's the primary issue as somebody coming into the industry is, the cost of it. And certainly these short courses aren't cheap. So, if you factor in that cost and use that money to live off while you went through an apprenticeship training position, that would perhaps help smooth some of that. But yeah, equally at the moment where there's such a low volume of positions anyway, and primarily employers are looking at younger people leaving school, it's difficult. But I would encourage you to try really hard to get on apprenticeship if you can. So have you enjoyed doing Apprentice 121? The short answer is I've loved it. I've really pushed myself out of my comfort zone on so many ways. Even doing a video like this is something I wouldn't have even considered 6 months ago. Been involved with the guys at EGTE and on the podcast and YouTube with them has really made me much more comfortable doing things like this. It's certainly developed me as a person. And yeah, I've loved doing it. I like helping people. The satisfaction I get of, giving somebody the opportunity to get back into work, or giving an employer the confidence to take an apprentice into their business. It's just something nice to do, isn't it? Who's not going to feel good from doing that? I certainly have done. how many people have you helped via your apprentice one-to-one? Quite a lot now. I mean, it depends what your definition of help is. If you're talking about actually into employment, it's over 200. Help in the way of even directing employers over to information about grants, or linking apprentices up with people who can help them with their AM2, or help them with learning a particular skill or task. I mean, I was totting it up the other day, and there's been over 5,000 interactions with apprentice one-to-one, so that's people getting in touch through the contact form on the website. It's people asking questions through Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn, and some of it is just, a basic, it's great to see what you're doing, and really support it. I'm going to share it on our social media platforms as well. If there's anything we can do, let it know. And other bits of it is, I've just been laid off last week. I'm desperate to get back into the industry. I need to be making money, otherwise I'm going to have to go off and do something else. So I don't really keep a running score of it all. If you like, maybe I should. But I would certainly think it's in the thousands now overall of people who we've helped with either direct support in training, employment, or information on how to apply for grants and employ apprentices. So yeah, quite a lot. So how much time do you spend on apprentice one-to-one? Lots is the short answer. So I mean, most of the time through the day I'm doing the day job. So I'm still out on the tools most often, or in the office sorting out workloads and schedules. So it tends to be on an evening where I'll get back to people, the direct messages and emails build up, and at the moment those numbers are high again. There was a little lull where it dropped right off. I think that was just the nature of how the furlough scheme was working maybe. And now those numbers are shot back up again. So sometimes I can be at my laptop and phone until midnight, just direct messaging and sending information out to people, linking people together. So yeah, it does take up quite a bit of time, but I've got into a bit of a routine with it now, so it's not too much difficulty, and yeah, I'll keep doing it as long as I'm needed. So what inspired you to start Apprentice One-to-One? I've answered this in a few of the industry magazine articles really, but it was just, I had people getting in touch with my little business in my local area to see if we had any jobs going, because they'd been made redundant due to COVID. And there was far more than I would have expected, and I just wondered if this was maybe something that was more widespread. It was before it was covered on the mainstream news, and I just thought maybe I can use my LinkedIn network to help a few people, and that's what I did, and it just kind of spiraled from there. So I wouldn't say it was real inspiration, it was just something that while I was sat in the back garden in the early lockdown, I just thought, maybe we can try this and see if we can help a few people out. And yeah, it went from there. So the next question is, what other services / people are helping that you're aware of? There's a number of people helping throughout industry, not just the apprenticeship sector, but I mean all sorts of people doing great things. Certainly, speaking of bodies, if you like, there's the ECA and the secondment scheme. So apprentices can be swapped through, I believe, different employers within the ECE membership to keep them in work and keep them able to practice those skills and carry on with the training. There's also the Steve Willis Training Centre down in Burgess Hill. They've got a scheme where they're linking employers and apprentices from their own training centre. So there's all sorts of people popping their efforts into things like that as well. There's all of the YouTube content that's been put out there of late. So you've had eFix and E5. There has also been the Learning Lounge. All sorts of content creators have been putting stuff out there to help people. And it's great to see that people are just doing something nice to try and help others in the industry. So there's loads of people out there doing stuff. I mean, even down to individuals who are employing apprentices when perhaps they otherwise wouldn't. Certainly with Apprentice One-to-One, I've seen that. So there's people getting in touch saying how, we wouldn't normally be considering it, but if you've got people who are needing that opportunity, we've got the volume of work there to help a little bit. So that's just individuals who you're not going to see on social media or promoting that story at all. So there's just good people like that doing nice things. In terms of services, there's the government's search tool, so you can search nationally for apprenticeship places, and even I think apprentices can register on there for employers to find them as well. So there's things like that. There was the Uno app that we were working on with Apprentice One-to-One, and that's now live and in use, which is helping people retrain and find jobs. So, I mean, there's that as well. There's probably loads of other things that I'm not even aware of. I'm certainly not a fountain of knowledge of that, to be truthful. But I mean, basically, the end story is that there's lots of people helping in all sorts of different ways. And yeah, if you go onto our social media platforms and have a search around, I'm sure you'll find it. Most of the CPSs, speaking of my own at NAPIT, they're doing something great with students where you can join free as a member if you're in education, which is fantastic. So you can get that technical support for free. So there's things like that as well. And yeah, I hope that answered that question. This is one that pops up a lot. It's like, what advice do you have to help people find work locally? So this is apprentices who are getting in touch. Like, I've tried everything. I've been in touch with the colleges. There are other things that I can do that can maybe help me find employment. And one of the things I often say is to go around all the local wholesalers with your CV or a little covering letter, and leave it with them, because wholesalers often know who's looking for some assistance on work. They have your employers coming into their branches every day picking up materials. So, I mean, if you get friendly with the local wholesaler, they're usually quite happy to take that CV and covering letter. And then when they're speaking with someone, you know, saying, oh, I've got this big project I could do with extra pair of hands, you know, they're a mouthpiece there to give your information out to that potential employer. So do that, consider that. If you're on social media and you're comfortable doing things like that, certainly an Instagram profile which showcases your work and things that you have done, that's another good option. And just the basic time-old tested method of phoning around electrical contractors in your local area and see if they're looking to take somebody on. You know, we will help where we can, but obviously we don't have everybody in the country within our group, and there's going to be loads of employers out there who aren't even aware of Apprentice 121 at all. So it's making that effort, putting those hard yards in, and seeing if you can just speak to people. Never be afraid of talking to people. The worst they're going to say to you is, nah, sorry mate, I'm not interested. Nothing lost there, is there? You know, you might find that one person who's like, actually, yeah, come down and see me and we can have a chat. So yeah, just that's my best advice there. So where do I think the decline started? It's a good question. I think the decline is quite a misleading idea, really. There has been a decline in apprenticeship placements, if you like, traditional apprenticeship placements. But I don't think there's the big decline in the industry that we all see. I mean, certainly there is people doing electrical work who've come through a training regime that is questionable, and some of the work that they produce is questionable as well. But where, certainly on social media, we seem to have this focus on work that's not up to standard. We do also have to be mindful that there is going to be absolutely bucket loads of work that's fantastic, and we're not seeing it. It's not a fair representation of the situation, I don't think. So while I'm not trying to say everything is rosy, far from it, there are problems. I don't like the term decline. We just have an issue to solve at the moment, and hopefully working together as a collective and embracing the problems that we're all identifying, we can maybe, you know, constructively work towards changing that. But I mean, my own point of view that I've expressed before is that I think we opened up the electrical trade to people who hadn't come through traditional training routes in areas where we maybe shouldn't. So for me, speaking personally, it's the pat testing in the early 2000s, because a lot of electricians don't really enjoy doing pat testing, and it's not something that we encouraged ourselves to do, should I say. There was an entry into the industry through short course training in that sector of plug top testing, and you know, the latest edition of the IT Code of Practice is trying to address that, and it's removing the term pat testing. I do think that was kind of the first step, if you like, and since that point we've had short courses spring up for all sorts of other things, and the introduction of Part P. I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's right, but that's how I see the first change, if you like, the first step into where we are now. Question follows on from the last one quite nicely, but what's the longer term plan for Apprentice 121? The honest answer is there wasn't one. So it just kind of started out of nothing, you know, earlier on in the year, with no real direction or business plan. I mean, that's often where we get caught up in things where we're running businesses. We have plans, don't we? We have goals and things we're working towards. This is just something that jumped out of my mind one day, and I thought it'd be nice to try and see if we can help people. Now, as it's progressing, I guess there is a longer term view that we can maybe support and encourage the apprenticeship system again in the electrical industry. So maybe really try and get behind people who want an apprenticeship and try and encourage employers to consider it and see the benefits of it. Obviously, in the outset, there is a cost to employing an apprentice, but through the course of that training, there should be payback for the employer as well. Even small one-man bands, and it's tackling that mindset. It's just a drain on my business resources. Obviously, to start with, definitely, and at the moment with COVID and the lack of work and everyone's struggling, it's not something that we can push on to people. But if you are in a position to take on an extra pair of hands, it's encouraging people rather than looking into some labour that you might take on a short-term basis to assist you. Consider the apprenticeship system. It's paying back to the future of the trade and also a great way to help grow your business. So yeah, the longer-term plan for A121, speaking myself, would be to just encourage people to be an apprentice. So engage more with school leavers and try and point it out as being a valid and prosperous and nice career to enter into. And then for employers, that it's a way to benefit you as a business, as well as benefit the trade as well for the future. So yeah, I guess that's just my own ramblings. I would have to come to some kind of collective decision on that one between ourselves. So have you made money from Apprentice 121? No is the short answer. I won't drag too long on this one because this video is probably going to end up far too long anyway. But no, not made any money at all. In fact, quite the opposite. It's cost me money in hosting the website and postage of prizes, and that's not even having any kind of value on the time I put into this. It's just something that I thought was needed through the COVID situation, and now we're looking more longer term. Maybe there will be a point where some funding needs to be raised to sustain it. Obviously, I can't pump my own resources into this endlessly, but that's still to be decided. As I say, I've got a collective of trustees together to now, and we can make that decision as a group rather than just myself. For the moment, I'm happy to keep it going as it is, but no money at all has passed into my hands. So how do people get in touch? That's a good question, because that's the most important aspect of Apprentice 121 when I started. It was just linking people together and putting people in touch. So for the moment, we have the website. You can go on there and register. It sends a message through to me, and I can read that and direct your inquiry in the best way possible to other people within the Apprentice 121 group. There's also LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter where I'm active, and I've had direct messages on all of those platforms from employers, apprentices and other people in the industry, and joined those dots. So they're the best ways to get in touch through social media at the minute, and the big one seems to be Instagram for apprentices. We have a lot of apprentices getting in touch through Instagram, and employers tend to come through LinkedIn. Just seems to be the way it is. I guess that's the way the platforms are weighted, probably. But yeah, get in touch through social media and the website. So have you suffered trolling? That's what your own definition of trolling would be. I don't think I have. No, I've not had anybody be, personally insulting about my physical appearance or whatnot. But I have had people try and discredit some of the things I say. I wouldn't necessarily call that trolling. That's just people being a bit stupid. So yeah, there's been one or two things pop up on posts I've made where somebody might have suggested they think the way I'm behaving is a certain way. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, but there has been little instances like that, but nothing I would define as trolling. Some people hide behind the trolling to try and avoid answering questions that people are asking. So if someone ever asks a question of me, even if I don't feel comfortable with that question, I will try and answer it and not just dismiss it as trolling, because we need to be realistic that people are allowed a different opinion. People are allowed to think different from you. And if you engage in that process, you can actually learn yourself. You might not be right about everything. So no, I wouldn't call it trolling. But yeah, certainly there's been some targeted misinformation, we'll say. So what do I think of online examinations? I'm not sure exactly what that question really refers to. I'm going to guess it's to do with the city and guilds examinations that you would take on a laptop, maybe, or perhaps where, due to COVID, that you'd be doing exams from home. I mean, as long as it's monitored and there is, you know, no possibility that you could be cheating. I mean, most of the exams we actually take a open book anyway, so I guess it would be a third party who was giving you the answers, perhaps. You know, it's a tough one because we can't all be within the same space as each other right now, so perhaps there's a place for online examinations. But I do think you need that level of control where it's audited, is the word I'm looking for, I suppose, to make sure that there's no cheating going on. So, yeah, hope that answers that question. So did we have more apprentices in the past? I don't have a time machine, but I think historically we certainly did. It was an entry point into the industry that most people would take, you know, even going back not so far, I suppose, into the 90s. Showing my age, I guess, because for some people that's probably ages ago, but it doesn't feel that long ago to me. You know, there certainly seemed to be a larger pool of apprentices coming through. Companies would generally have an intake each year. Most small domestic electricians, sole traders, would have an apprentice who would do the training with them and then go on to start their own businesses or go on and be qualified electricians in their own right, working somewhere else. You know, that's just the way it seemed to be. It certainly was the case when I was entering the industry, and speaking to mentors I had at that time, that was just how it had been through their experience in the trade as well. It's how they'd all come to be in the trade. And I think at the moment there is still recruitment of apprentices from large main contractors. They are often used as just cheap labour and don't have the supervision that perhaps you would expect, certainly not on a one-to-one basis. So no, I don't think we have as many as a percentage of the workforce today, certainly. And you know, that's sad in a way. It would be nice to see that we have some sort of resurgence of the apprenticeship system in my eyes. If you talk to some of the people older than myself who've been in the trade, it used to be a shining light of the industry that people would come through with pride as qualified time-served apprentices, and I think we need to get back to that, and hopefully that can be the case in the future. So is the apprentice training system suited to 2020? That's a tough one, really, because some of it has been, I mean, certainly with AM2, it's not as intensive as it once was. If we're looking at that as a specific side of the apprenticeship system. But I guess it's more leaning towards, does it include enough of renewables, for example, so photovoltaic and EV charging, or smart homes and smart tech, or is it more traditionally based on the competencies of being an electrician? And I certainly think there's an argument for getting some of the more modern installation practices in there, so smart homes and renewables, certainly. Perhaps that's something that the training sector needs to look at. I don't know, it might already be happening in some training industries. You know, as the electrical industry is evolving, we're perhaps going away from the more traditional aspects of containment and tube and tray, and more towards installing data cabling and electronics, DC. So perhaps there is a point in time where that review should be made, maybe. That would be one for some of my colleagues who are in the training sector to answer, I think. My own opinion for the moment, it gives the basic competencies of being a traditional electrician, and certainly it wouldn't hurt to look at perhaps including some more other aspects of the modern electrical roles in the future. So have others tried to discredit you? This is a question that was asked a few times a couple of weeks ago, actually, and I've kind of answered it with the trolling one. And I don't want to make this video personal about me. I try to focus on the positives more than anything, but it has happened to a point. I mean, obviously, you know, it's what your class has been discredited. There's been a couple of little incidents, shall we say, where I've been accused of doing this for the fame, and I've done videos about that at the time, so I'm not going to go over old ground. There was also a bit of to-ing and throwing in LinkedIn, if you like, where I'd done a post and someone suggested that the things I'm posting over on that platform was some way attacking or undermining their own content, and I found that odd that they'd come on to a post of mine saying that, which in itself is attacking and undermining, isn't it? Somebody coming onto your content saying that, suggesting that you behave in that way when they're actually doing that themselves in that comment. You know, I certainly felt a little bit discredited there when the person saying that was somebody who who I've only spoken positively of publicly, and the content that I produce is in no way aimed at them. To be honest, they've never even entered my mind in any of the posts that I do. So I found that a little bit weird. But would I call it discrediting? I guess on a platform like LinkedIn, where I do a lot of business, it can make me look that way to potential clients. So yeah, possibly. But I mean, I've got thick skin. It's not something that really bothered me, other than, you know, highlighting it. I won't ever sit back and let people say things like that without challenging it. And again, you know, people will say, "Oh, well, like, you know, you're just trolling me now." But again, that comes back to what we're defining as that. That's just somebody offering a reasoned debate and argument. And I'll always enter into those discussions and push back against people who are suggesting I'm behaving in a certain way when I feel like I'm not. So yeah, I guess that's where those questions came from. It was literally like 5 or 6, one after the other, and you know, that goes back to other people kind of trying to stir things up, I guess. And I might not actually include this question in the video, but we'll see. So I hope you enjoyed that. I've run through those 20 as quick as I can. They are just questions that have come through over the course of the last few months, through direct messages and on the website. And I've picked out some of the most commonly asked questions and answered them as honestly as I can. So if you've got any other questions that you do want answering, drop them in the comments or drop them over through social media or on the website, and I'll do my best to answer them. And maybe we'll edit and modify this video as time moves along. So thanks for watching, and any other questions, just fire away.